beautiful people, and welcome to All Things Teaching with Beanie. My name is Beanie. I went to a government school from my home province, and I noticed between the two schools, the government school and the private schools, I noticed that there is so much that needs to be done. So when I came here to this particular private school that I'm in right now, which I will not name, I noticed that the learners, they are really out there, they're not shy to voice out their opinions. So in all my lesson presentations, I always make sure that I give learners more than just what the curriculum is telling us to give the learners, because I want the learners to be able to be individuals rather than to, be part of a group. I decided that I just want to be different, to be a different student teacher or student educator. So in all my lesson plans, I put my utmost best into it, because I don't want to teach learners the same way that I was taught, where you're just sitting down and the educator is just using a direct instruction method to give out information, to give out knowledge. So I decided that I am going to include multiple teaching strategies in all my lessons, but mainly I want the learners to grasp what I am saying in a fun and interactive way. So most of the time in all my lesson I use play-based learning, because I noticed that these learners, they are young, they want to play. They don't always just want to sit at their desks and work. So how do I use their energy? How do I take advantage of the fact that they are so hyped up and just make sure that they learn throughout everything that I am giving out to them? So I decided to use a strategy of play-based learning, whereby when I introduce my lesson for the introductory phase, we play, and then the teaching and learning phase, that's where we work, and then the closure phase, that's where I give individual feedback. That's where I assess the learners, how much have they retained this information, what is it that they understand, where must I go from there. Because before I even start doing my lessons, I always make sure that I interact with the subject educator. I sit down with the subject educator. Ma'am or sir, how far are you with these learners? Where must I continue? And then the educator is like, no, I stopped at this particular point. This is where I want you to go. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I take that part that I am supposed to prepare for. I sit down and I do research, because the learner's textbook, it does not have a lot of information in it on its own. It has limited information. So I take that learner's textbook and then I look at the topic that I'm going to be presenting to the learners. I sit down and I do research, It takes me days. Sometimes it takes me hours and hours of research, because I just want to get that easy way of giving them information. I break down difficult concepts and I just break it down into smaller concepts in order for them to understand what I am saying, and in order for them to be like, oh yeah, that is what I want, that is the reaction that I want from learners. So it's been 3 years since I have been in this field, and it is honestly such an amazing field. To all of you who are thinking of embarking on this field but you're not really sure if it's your calling, it's not necessarily about calling. It only needs patience and love for children. If you do not have love for children, unfortunately this is going to be very difficult for you to do. If you do not have patience, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to present your lessons to the learners, to be able to just sit down with the learners and take them through what it is that they need to do. Because not all the learners in the classroom, they learn at the same pace. Not all of them learn through the same learning styles. So in your presentations, you have to use multiple teaching strategies. You have to make sure that you accommodate all the learning styles of the learners. And sometimes in order for you to do that as a student educator, you need to get to know the learners on a personal level. There has to be a time in your lesson or during break where you take learners, either a group or just a few, from the class that you are observing or the class that you are teaching, and you just ask them personal questions. How are you at home? How many are you at home? What language do you speak at home? Get to know them, get to know their likes and their dislikes, get to know what it is that makes them who they are and makes them who they want to become. That way you are able to draft your lesson in in such a manner that it will accommodate all your learners. I know that it's not easy drafting a lesson plan, and I know that it can be very, very stressful, and this work field on its own, it's very exhausting. Working with learners is not a joke. I really thought that, you know what, an educator, he just stands there, or he just stands there and just talks. That's how I saw it before. I'd be like, teaching is so easy. It is the easiest job ever. The teacher just stands there and just talks. Open your textbook, you read. Yes, the activity below is your classwork, and then the one that follows is your homework, and then next week you have a test, or in the next coming weeks or months you have a test or an exam. But that is not actually all that it is to teaching. There is so much that happens behind closed doors that we are not aware of. And I noticed that when I started teaching, that there is so much work that goes on behind closed doors, that goes on behind the classroom environment. Because teachers, they literally sit down, they look at the content, they have to take that content and they have to break it down into smaller particles, into smaller pieces, into smaller chunks, for the learners to be able to understand the content that they are giving out to the learners. Because it is pointless to have such a beautiful lesson plan and present it so beautifully when a learner does not even understand or isn't even able to actually explain to you what they learned. It's pointless. So you need to know the cognitive level of the learner. You need to make time to sit down with the learners and know their background, know who's there, know who's taking care of them, know what time they get home, know the language that they speak at home. Because I noticed that in this particular private school, there are so many languages here. The language of communication, rather the lingua franca that is being used is English, but the learners, when they get home, not all of them speak English at home. They speak Tsonga, they speak Chivenda, they speak Swati, they speak Xhosa, they speak Zulu or Sepedi or Setswana, or rather some they even speak Afrikaans. So as an educator, you really need to know what it is that you are getting yourself into, because if you don't know what it is that you're getting yourself into, you will not be able to take your learners through the process that they need to be taken through. So make sure that in everything that you do in life, you accommodate the learner as a whole. Don't just look at the learner from a point where you're like, yeah, he's just a learner. No, you have to look at the learner as a whole. Look at the background of the learner. Look at the family structure of the learner. Look at the cognitive level of the learner. Look at the learner as a whole. The child, what does the child like and dislike? The strengths and the weaknesses, the desires and the interests, the aspirations of the learner, in order for you to be able to draft a proper lesson plan, in order for you to be able to deliver a lesson presentation in a manner that the learners will be able to understand. It hasn't been easy, but I take each day as it comes, and I use that in my daily life. And that's what I'm trying to teach my learners as well, that you don't have to understand something just immediately. Sometimes you need time in order for you to be able to understand the content that is given out to you. Sometimes you just need to sit down and go back to what you've learned, and then study again over and over until you get it. Or some learners, when you teach them, they understand immediately, but there are those learners that when you teach them, it takes time. So you need to have patience, you need to have love for this field. Otherwise, you are going to just have a mental breakdown, an emotional breakdown. You're going to break and fall in so many areas that you did not even know that you could. You think that, I'm a strong person, then boom, all of a sudden you have a mental breakdown, because you don't have the love for these learners. You don't have that patience for them. Learners, they need love, they need attention, they need lots of attention. Can I just mention, they need lots of attention, and you need to love them, because this career, this field, it comes with love. It comes with so many beautiful things. It's exhausting working with learners, because these learners, they have different personalities, and in a classroom, in this particular private school, it's only 20 learners per class, so you are able to give them individual feedback. You are able to actually sit down with them and notice who struggles, who needs more help, who needs assistance, who needs me to just remove my scaffolding a little bit, who are those learners that are strong, who are those that are weaklings, and you are able to actually build each and every single learner up, because you are working with such a small amount of learners, as compared to in government schools, where sometimes the learners are like 40 something, close to 50, some are even 60, and they're just seated in a cramped classroom where you can't even move in between the desks. You can't even assess learners. You can't give them immediate feedback because the classroom is small and they are all cramped and they are tired and they're always competing with one another. Sometimes when you talk, they can't even hear you because they are also making a noise. When you sit down with this particular group and you actually reprimand them of their actions, there's another group at the back or in the middle that is making noise and that is disrupting your lesson. So when you are in a private school versus when you're in a government school, you will see that there's a huge difference. But either way, learners are learners. They all come from different backgrounds. They all speak different languages, and they all have different cultures. So when they enter into a classroom, you have to create an environment of your own culture, and you have to make sure that all the learners, they feel included. They are one, because that's where they find belonging in a classroom. Feel like I belong in her classroom or in his classroom. I feel like that's where I belong. So in essence, what I'm saying is that there's still more from me to come. There is still more that I'm going to learn. There's still more that I'm going to give out to the learners that I'm going to present my lessons to. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls out there, if you want to do teaching as a career, I advise you to do your research. Look within yourself first before you look outside. Do you have the characteristics for this particular field of study? Are you patient with the learners? Are you understanding? Are you empathetic? Do you have love for children? Because if you don't have certain qualities or characteristics as an individual, this job is going to be so difficult for you. You'll be so stressed. Instead of being so joyful that you are actually shaping these learners, you'll be stressed and frustrated. So you need to look within yourself first in order for you to be able to produce the quality that you know that you are capable of producing. Other than that, you need to study. Bachelor's of Education is 4 years. And once you've done that, just enjoy it, man. I mean, enjoy your practicals. Enjoy every moment. Learn each and every single day. Use that opportunity to learn. Don't be that educator that just sits there and waits for information to come to them. Go out, do the extra work, go the extra mile, give these learners quality work, quality lesson presentation, quality activities. Don't just be that educator that does things quick and just be like, see yourself out, throws the learners into the ocean and says, swim, find your way to the shore. No, don't do that. Assist these learners, give them a floaty so that they can be able to stay afloat. Assist them, guide them, because these learners are in a state of puberty, so hormones are kicking in, they're competing with one another, low self-esteem, and so forth and so forth. So from me, Bena, and all things teaching with Bena, thank you so much for watching, guys. See you later.